Greetings and blessings, you guys. It's your host, Marquita Brooks again, and I am sharing a message with you guys entitled God Speaks, Babylon and the Beast in Our Time. Y'all know I've done lots and lots of teachings on Babylon and the Beast. You can actually go to the Truth in the Spirit's YouTube channel, Truth in Spirit Live, look for a playlist called Babylon and the Beast, and you'll see videos that I've been recording since 2017. So there's lots and lots of videos that are available for you to peruse, to really learn from and glean from. And so, my teachings tend to build upon each other. I'll try to, recap some things I've said before, but the things I'm going to share today will build upon previous teachings where I've talked to you guys about those two warring principalities. We see both of them in Daniel chapter 7 coming up out of the sea, which is the abyss. That is the place that particularly heinous demons are kept until human sin draws them out. And so they come up out of the abyss, which is metaphorically represented by the sea, and they come into human existence and they interact and influence us and seek to make deals with influential people in authority, so that we would trade our authority with them for their help in increasing our influence and sustaining that influence. But of course, the enemy always gives things at a price. And so he takes authority over nations, regions, groups of people. And even when the human leaders die, who made those original covenants with the demons try to hold on to the authority that has been, given to them by human sin, and try to make deals with subsequent leaders so that they can continue to rule in the earth. They even threaten new leaders through the systems that they've created, that those leaders will not be successful. They may not even be able to become leaders unless they play ball, unless they work with the principalities that have been in place through previous leaders. Now, of course, all of this is the trick of the enemy, because when we take our stand against the enemy, we retain our kingdom authority. When we call upon the Lord, he himself gives us victory to stand against principalities, powers, and rules of darkness in this dark age. But the scripture tells us some things that are going to happen because of people's wickedness. In the season that we're in, because of people's wickedness historically, the scripture tells us some things that are going to transpire. And so let us look at Revelation chapter 17, because I'm going to give you a quick historic view of something that occurred with Babylon and the beast. And then I'm going to bring you up to speed as to where we are in contemporary times, and even connect it with what we see happening in Israel right now, which is absolutely unprecedented. So here we are in Revelation chapter 17. Of course, I'll connect it back to Revelation chapter 13 and a few other places where we see the beast. But in Revelation chapter 17, I'm going to start reading at the beginning, and then I'll skip around a little bit and give you all the verses that you need out of this chapter. I really encourage you to read the whole chapter, but I want to give you the snippets that you need for this discussion that we're having today. It says, then came one of the angels with the seven bowls, and of course, those seven bowls of God's wrath had been poured out. So this is one of those angels. And he said to me, come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore who is sitting by many waters. He's speaking about Babylon. The kings of the earth went whoring with her, and the people living on earth have become drunk from the wine of her whoring. He carried me off in the spirit to a desert, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, filled with blasphemous names and having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and glittered with gold, precious stones, and pearls. In her hand was a gold cup filled with the obscene and filthy things produced by her whoring. On her forehead was written a name with a hidden meaning: Babel, or Babylon, the great mother of horrors and of the earth's obscenities. I saw the woman drunk from the blood of God's people, that is, from the blood of the people who testify about Yeshua. On seeing her, I was altogether astounded. Now, that was verses 1-6 of Revelation chapter 17. Now, I'm going to give you some references to help you understand what's happening in this vision that John is seeing. Okay, so he's seeing the time of the judgment of Babylon. Now, of course, Revelation chapter 18 actually goes into that judgment, where it talks about the merchants lamenting because Babylon has fallen, and they were made rich by their commerce back and forth their trade because of Babylon. And so you see in Revelation chapter 18 the effect that the fall of Babylon has on the world. And this is end times. This is actually the times that we're in right now. Babylon is falling. And I've done lots of teachings to talk about Babylon falling, even Babylon falling in America, the fall of Babylon in America. Lots of teachings about the fall of Babylon, and they're going to focus on Revelation chapter 18, a little bit in Revelation chapter 17. So in 18, you see, in Revelation chapter 18, in verse 2, you see that Babylon is full of every impure spirit. And as you continue on and you read from verses 11 down to verse 13, it talks about all the things that Babylon traffics in, to include humans, the bodies and souls of people. And so Babylon sells anything, and it has made, the merchants of the world rich by its trafficking in all types of things. And so when you go back and you see that she is being judged, it's because of the way she does business. Business, of course, itself isn't evil. Making money, even wealth itself, is not evil. It is Babylon's ways of creating wealth that are evil. Babylon, as I shared with you guys, establishes a system of commerce, but it is on the backs of downtrodden people, enslaved people, oppressed people, robbed and defrauded people. Babylon creates a wealthy empire on somebody's back. So it always comes at the cost of a people group, an economic group, a socioeconomic group. It comes at the cost of something. It even comes at the cost of the souls of those who are in fellowship with Babylon, because they literally have to sell their souls to Babylon. All morality, all ethics go out the window as they begin to do whatever it takes to earn more and more money. They begin to chase a dollar. Finances becomes their god. They completely sell out on anything that's moral. And then they say things like, it's not personal, it's business. And so they get rid of all standards that would guide our human interactions for the sake of finance. There's cover-ups, there's witchcraft involved. As Babylon, you see Revelation chapter 7, Babylon is the winged lion that's given the heart of a man. And through that heart of a man, Babylon discerns the desires of people and lures them by their desires, telling them they can have whatever they want. Then feeding people pleasure and comfort so that they become lulled into a spiritual sleep and find themselves in spiritual bondage, completely separated from God and having compromised their values and their morals in ways that they never thought that they would. This is how Babylon operates. And this is why she's called the great whore. This is why she said, it says that she's full with obscenities because, again, she's willing to sell anything. Okay. Now it says here in verse 1, this is still Revelation chapter 17. In verse 1, it says she's sitting by many waters. Now, of course, the Proverbs tells us to send out our wares on many waters, because we don't know what's going to prosper, so that we'll get a return on our investment. So Babylon, of course, is using biblical wisdom, sitting on many waters, but she's not adhering to biblical standards, ethics, or morality. So Babylon, again, is sending out her wares on many waters, trafficking in this and that and this and that, because the scripture tells us we don't know what will be prosperous. So we should have a diversified portfolio. We should invest in many things because we don't know what will prosper. Well, Babylon is certainly doing that. But she is cutting every corner. She is defrauding. She is bribing. She is trying to get over and around laws and regulations, all of that, in order to make things be prosperous. So she's selling to everybody, every nation, every group. This principality is working and is at work throughout the whole world at this point. Now it says, the kings of the earth went whoring with her, and the people living on earth became drunk from the wine of her whoring. Again, remember, lulled into that spiritual sleep. That's what that means, becoming drunk from the wine of her whoring. You want more and more stuff. And you're so distracted by stuff. You got to get the new this and the new that. You got to keep up with the Joneses. And you need all this stuff so that you don't focus on your own spiritual growth. You don't focus on your own maturation. You don't focus on future generations. You certainly are separated from God, and you lose sight of morality and ethics, and anything that would cause you to grow and improve as a person. Instead, you denigrate within your own soul, within your own self, becoming focused and greedy only on making money and the pleasures, the comforts of life. This is what Babylon focuses people on: the pleasures and comforts of life, the pride of life. So in verse 3, this woman, Babylon, the great prostitute, she's sitting on a scarlet beast. Now, the beast is filled with blasphemous names, and it has 7 heads and 10 horns. This is Revelation chapter 17, verse 3. It has 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, when we go back to Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, it says, the dragon stood on the shore of the sea. Remember, I told y'all that's the abyss. That's where the demons are coming out from. As we sin, we draw those demons. We call those demons out of the abyss so that they can make us more effective at that sin. It's like our will releases those demons from the abyss. Okay, so now it says, and I saw the beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. This is the same beast. It is the beast, anti-Messiah, anti-Christ, the terrifying beast of Daniel chapter 7. It's the same beast. Now, it looks different. I've shared this many times from its description in Daniel chapter 7, because by the time it gets here in Revelation chapter 13, it has morphed. Over the millennia, it has watched. It watched those other 3 principalities in Daniel chapter 7, the lion, which is Babylon, the bear, which is Medo-Persia, violence and world conquest, and the 4-headed, 4-winged leopard that was sent out to rule the world, which is reason of world conquest. That's Greece. So this beast has watched those 3. So in Revelation chapter 13, it resembles a leopard. This is verse 2. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, like it has the body of a leopard, but it has feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast its power and his throne and great authority. So in the end times, it is taking on the qualities of Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece, which is going to be pride of life, decadence, and the great whore Babylon is taking on the warlike, violent, terroristic tactics of the bear, Medo-Persia, that walks in violence but denies the truth. And then it has taken on the characteristics of the leopard, with the 4 heads and the 4 wings in Daniel chapter 7, that is bent on world conquest through man's reasoning, as it supersedes, or saying that it supersedes the revelation of God, so that people lean on their own understanding and see God's revelation as foolishness. So the Bible is foolishness, God's word is foolishness. That's what the leopard represents. So this beast is operating in all of that in the end times. Now, when we go back to Revelation chapter 17, Babylon is sitting on top of it. And what we see here is it's as if Babylon has defeated it. But Babylon has. It just looks like Babylon has defeated it, but Babylon has not defeated it. Instead, we're going to see later on, this beast is going to rise up. This beast is going to rise up and defeat Babylon. I'm going to share a few things with you guys that I've never shared before. Like everything I've just said, I've shared it in previous teachings, trying to make sure that I catch you up. But there's some new stuff that I need to share with you today, that we're going to see here in Revelation chapter 17. It's completely new. You're not going to find it in any of the other teachings, okay? Now we're starting in verse 7. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astounded? I will tell you the hidden meaning of the woman and the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that was carrying her. The beast you saw once was, now is not, and will come up from the abyss, See, it says abyss there. In Revelation chapter 13, it says the sea. That's how I'm telling you the sea is the abyss, because of course I've taken all these scriptures over years and studied them in the presence of the Lord. So when it says the abyss, it's talking about the sea. That you see the beast coming up out of the sea in Revelation 13. You see it coming out of the sea in Daniel chapter 7. But here in Revelation chapter 17, verse 8, it says this beast comes out of the abyss. The sea is metaphorically representing the abyss, okay? But it is on its way to destruction. This is the beast. The people living on earth whose names have not been written in the book of life since the founding of the world will be astounded to see the beast that once was Now it's not, but it's to appear. Again, coming up out of the abyss. This calls for a mind with wisdom. Now watch this. The seven heads, this is the seven heads of the beast, are seven hills on which the woman is sitting. There are also seven kings. Five have fallen, one is living now, and the other is yet to come. And when he does come, he must remain only for a little while. Now, this is so important because from this verse, verse 9 of Revelation chapter 17, we get what we call the seven mountains of influence. We talk about them all the time, government and religion and family and media and arts and entertainment. Some people say that agriculture is one. But there's banking and finance. And so there's these seven mountains of influence that people say are these seven hills that Babylon is sitting on. But the scripture tells us that the seven heads, now where do we see seven heads? The seven heads of the beast on which she is sitting are the seven hills or the seven mountains of influence. Babylon is sitting on seven mountains of influence, but the seven mountains of influence are the seven heads of the beast. Now, it's very important that you get that, because what that shows us is that Babylon and the beast have had an interconnected relationship from the beginning. So if the seven hills are the seven mountains of influence, and I've just shared those with you guys, the different seven mountains of influence, right? And these are ways that people live. These are aspects of our lives. But there are also, because there are aspects of our lives, there are areas of authority and influence. And there are areas in which Babylon can make money. So Babylon can make money off of family by creating products and services that supposedly serve families. Of course, it's coming from the Babylonian mindset. So it's not biblical and actually will cause some destruction to families and disruption. But Babylon markets it in such a way that families go, oh, we have to have this. We need this in our lives, like creating nanny services. So that it gets to the place where it's not just those who have to work, both parents have to work to support their children, but it becomes an entire structure of our society where people bring in nannies or bring in an au pair, and they're right there with their children, but they don't want to raise them. Someone else is now raising them. This is a system that now comes into place that influences an aspect of our society, and Babylon is making money from it. But these areas of influence are actually the head of the beast. Kingdoms, meaning rulerships, areas of rulership wherein the beast operates. Now, this is key because, one, I've never taught this before, and two, I've never heard anyone else teach this before. You've got to get an understanding here that Babylon makes money off of the seven mountains of influence, but the beast functions through the seven mountains of influence. Family and religion being two of those mountains. Politics being another, government, finance and banking being another. Like the beast functions, it's a head of the beast, where it's an area of influence. It's a mountain for Babylon to reign over. Babylon wants to reign over families. And we see this happening with the vast amounts of money that is made from the abortion industry. See, abortion has become an industry. That's Babylon sitting on the mountain of influence called family. That's what it looks like when Babylon sits on this beast. And the seven heads of the beast are seven mountains on which Babylon sits. It's a place of influence. It's an area of influence. So Babylon is influencing our families through commercial ways that actually affect the way our children grow, affect our marriages, affect the structure of family. We see slavery, for example, because Babylon traffics in bodies and souls of men. Babylon actually attacks the families of slaves, breaking up family homes, separating mothers and fathers, studying out the male slave. We've certainly seen that in the transatlantic slave trade, and in slavery in the Americas, breaking down the family unit. So Babylon is making money off of that mountain of family. Babylon makes money off of that mountain of religion. The beast, instead of it being a mountain, a place of influence for the beast, it is instead a head of the beast. It's an area in which the beast functions. The beast is functioning within our construct of family. The beast is functioning within our construct of religion. The beast is functioning and ruling within our construct of our concept of government, of finance. So I need y'all to understand the relationship that we see here. And I'm going to explain to you, I share this all the time, why the beast hates Babylon. So we see an interconnected relationship initially, but we see the beast hating Babylon because at first in Revelation chapter 17, Babylon is sitting on top of the beast, as if to say Babylon is using the beast for its purposes. But we're going to see later on there's more to understand about how this is going to operate, because the beast is then going to destroy Babylon. Let's look at verse 15. This is still Revelation chapter 17. Then he said to me, the waters that you saw where the whore is sitting are peoples, crowds, nations, and languages. Remember what I said? She's sending out her wares to everybody. Everybody all over the world is now partaking in this commerce from Babylon. Everybody is buying her wares. You'll go to other countries and see blue jeans. People wearing blue jeans. Of course, those came from the United States. And you'll see us, we bought, we import things from other cultures. So the point is that Babylon is selling to everybody. And when Babylon sells, it's not just a product. There's a spirit behind it. She's lulling us into a spiritual stupor. Remember, we're getting drunk off of her wine, that we would care about the stuff. We would care about the money and not care about our own spiritual condition, the condition of our nations, future generations. We would stop caring about those things in such a way that we're willing to sacrifice. Instead, we just want more of the stuff she sells us, so that we go mad and drunk and really lose sight of what's important. That's Babylon's goal, that we lose sight of what's really important. In that way, Babylon enslaves the whole world. That was always Babylon's plan. Okay, now watch this though, verse 16. As for the 10 horns that you saw and the beast, because remember those 10 horns were on the beast. Yes, the beast has 7 heads, which means it has a complete structure of manifestation. It manifests in 7 completely unrelated ways, right? So you got the 7 heads of the beast, but then it also has 10 horns, which are 10 kings. These are rulers ruling in different ways, in varying ways all over the world. So it says, look in verse 6. This is verse 16 of Revelation chapter 17. As for the 10 horns that you saw and the beast, they will hate the whore, bring her to ruin, leave her naked, eat her flesh, and consume her with fire. Remember that. It's very important. Okay. Verse 17 and 18. For God put it in their hearts to do what will fulfill his purpose. That is, to be of one mind and give their kingdom to the beast until God's words have accomplished their intent. And the woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Of course, that's Babylon. Now, there's some things you've got to understand, because this it's a hard revelation to get, because it means so many different things all at one time. So remember, the beast is the Babylon, the whore is sitting on the beast. She is sending her products across the waters to everybody. So everybody's buying all of her products. She's at the head of many waters, sending her products to nations all over the world. The kings, the horns, are on the beast. The heads, the 7 heads, which are the 7 mountains of influence, these spheres of life that Babylon uses to create her products, saying that they meet needs, but they actually create want. She creates the demand, and then she supplies it. So she is in control of the entire system, using our areas of life to create what she tells us that we need. Very important that you get that. But those 7 mountains of influence are 7 heads of the beast, because the beast is actually trying to rule in those 7 areas of life, and he's doing it in 7 disconnected ways, or seemingly disconnected ways, operating in groups. I've shared this with you guys many times when I minister out of Revelation chapter 13. The beast operates, seven is, it means complete, operates out of a complete myriad of ways that seem to be unconnected whatsoever, because there's seven different distinct heads, but they're all connected to this one principality of the beast. They don't even all know that they're connected, but they are connected. So on the beast, we see these seven heads and the seven areas of life that the beast wants to influence. But there are also seven modes or complete modes of the beast reaching people throughout the earth. Lots of different groups. He reaches all different types of groups, but the beast does it in a very specific way. Yes, the beast has the mouth of a lion. So like Babylon, because the beast has watched Babylon over the millennia and morphed into this form we see in Revelation chapter 13. Like Babylon, the beast is luring people by the desires of their hearts, but not the way Babylon does it. See, Babylon wants to know what you want. And then Babylon's going to increase your desire for it, and then Babylon's going to supply that demand that it kind of creates in you based off of a teeny desire that you have. A secret desire, Babylon capitalizes on it, makes you, demand for it, and then continues to supply it to you until you have a habit, until you have an addiction, and you've got to have what Babylon gives, okay? Again, now you're a slave to Babylon. The beast, on the other hand, when it lures people by the desires of their heart, the beast is looking for brokenness. The beast is looking for people who have felt dejected, rejected, disconnected, discontented. And usually these are the people, remember I told you, that Babylon creates a system where groups prosper, but it's on the backs of other groups. Well, the beast looks for the people on whose backs Babylon has built its system. So it says here that the beast hates the great whore. Remember, we just read it in Revelation chapter 17. In verse 16, it says, as for the 10 horns that you saw and the beast, they will hate the whore, bring her to ruin, leave her naked, eat her flesh, and consume her with fire. The principality of the beast hates the principality of Babylon because, one, remember, Babylon is sitting on top of the beast. So Babylon is presenting itself in the demonic realm as being the reigning principality, greater than all the others, right? The beast hates that, number one. The beast hates that because all demons are arrogant and selfish and self-absorbed. The beast hates that, number one. Babylon is sitting on top of it, like even using the beast, because as we saw, Babylon is really using the beast to create this empire, right? But the beast hates Babylon for another reason, and I've talked about this before, what I'm about to say. The beast hates that Babylon is all about decadence, luxuries, and excesses, because the leaders that Babylon raises up, the people that Babylon raises up, the empires Babylon builds, all become flesh-feeding and lazy eventually. They become so focused on stuff that they eventually lose the kingdom. And you'll see this with all type of empires that were influenced by Babylon. We're going to go over that in a minute historically, and we're going to talk about what's happening right now. So the beast hates that because Babylon does not teach people to be disciplined. Instead, Babylon feeds you whatever you want. You become fat, lazy, tired, sleepy, and unable to continue to wield the power and authority that Babylon is giving. And Babylon eventually loses the kingdom. Babylon always loses the kingdom eventually, because of its decadence and excesses, which is the system that it has established, the system of decadence and excess, right? The beast hates that. So the beast actually hates that Babylon keeps losing power and really is selfish and wants everything for itself. So the beast is willing to give honor to Satan, right? Saying we all need to work together, give honor to Satan, right? And then we will model the demonic kingdom like the kingdom of God. So just like the kingdom of God has a father, the son who gives all glory to the Father, the Holy Spirit who only speaks what the Father speaks. The beast says we need something like that. So if all the glory is given to Satan, right, makes him the demonic father, the beast, anti-Messiah, anti-Christ, then becomes like the son, Yeshua, who's willing to sacrifice. See, the beast is willing to sacrifice, right? And is disciplined and focus on Satan. Then you also see there's this false prophet in Revelation chapter 13. There's this false spirit of prophecy that comes forth that again points back to Satan. And the beast goes, oh, this is going to work. What you're doing, Babylon, is not going to work. And I hate that you're only out for yourself and you won't even use me to build your empire. So the beast wants to destroy Babylon. But the beast also uses the Babylonian tactic of drawing people by the desires of their heart to draw the people that Babylon has built its empire on top of. Slaves, prisoners, refugees, the poor, all of these people, ostracized groups that are on the, the edge of society, those who don't ever feel like they belong. All of these groups, the marginalized groups, that the beast looks for those groups within the empires that Babylon has built, and the beast starts to recruit them by their brokenness. See, the beast is not looking for the material wealth that they want, or the products that they want, or the excesses and luxuries that they want. The beast is looking for the revenge that they want. The beast is looking for the shift of power that they want. And the beast promises them, I know you've been on the bottom and you've been mistreated historically for years. I can put you on top. And then the beast teaches them. See, that's how he uses the mouth of Babylon. He speaks to their brokenness, draws them into a place where he promises them power. Then he teaches them the strategies of the bear to walk in violence. He puts guns in their hands, bombs in their hands, creates cults and terror groups out of them, right? So that and tells them, I will make them respect you because you'll walk in violence and they will have to respect you. But those people, of course, remember that bear walks in violence, but it denies the truth. So those people are fed some lie that seems like the truth, but completely denies the absolute truth of God. Even if they think they're serving God, they're not, because they're believing lies from the beast and they're willing to die to protect those lies. Then, of course, the beast now has this body of a leopard, and so it wants to rule the whole world, but it's doing it in a subversive way, so that it's recruiting online, it's recruiting in subtle ways, it's building up these cults and these groups, these terror groups that nobody knows are being built up. We got sleeper cells, right, all over the world, and it's building these networks all over the world, but below board, so that nobody knows that the beast is taking over the world, with secret societies and things like that are all about the money. So in Babylon, they were all about the money. But the secret societies that were with the beast, they're not all about the money. They're about a new world order. They're about a whole new kingdom. And at some point, when I told you this, there's multiple manifestations of the beast, all types of groups, like extreme terror groups, extreme religious groups, extreme cultural groups that are like racist and fanatical. All those groups come from the beast, and they all want to rule the world. They have some type of world conquest doctrine, but they're not connected to each other, or so they think. The beast will unite them. Groups that should never, or you would never think will be united, the beast is going to unite them so they can then rule the world. And this is so key, because this is what we see happening in our world right now. And remember what it says in verse 16. It says that they will eat her flesh and consume her with fire. It also says they will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. This is what the beast is going to do to Babylon. Now, what we've seen with COVID-19, social distancing, and all of the restructuring that nations, communities, and societies have had to do, we see both the beast and Babylon at war. We see them fighting against each other. When the businesses are closed, when there's a lockdown, when industries are affected and they can't get their wares out to people, the trucks can't ship things, and the ships can't ship the products and services. That's the beast shutting down Babylon. Whenever you see commerce being negatively affected, the beast is behind it, because Babylon would never do that. The beast is trying to shut down Babylon. Then you see the social unrest. What happens? Businesses are set on fire. That's the beast attacking Babylon, attacking her pocketbook, attacking her money. And the beast doesn't care whose business it is. Doesn't care. Which is why people say, why are minorities burning down minority-owned businesses. It's not about that. It's not about what people think it's about. The rhetoric and all the information that's being shared forth, it's not what it's about. It's not what it's about at all. It's not about injustices to certain groups and groups really wanting laws passed so there'll be true justice. It's not what it's about. It's what people say it's about. And that's what the beast tells them that it's about. But at the end of the day, it's about the beast destroying Babylon, which is why, this is why you see where cities have been pretty much under siege, right? And now people are going, okay, we're going to surrender to those who have been rioting and they're upset because we want them to stop burning businesses. We want them to stop, rioting, destroying property, right? So we are going to start to create new laws. We're going to put some new laws in place. But do the new laws, let's look at what's been happening since we've been in a new administration in the United States. Are the new laws actually leveling the scales of balance? Are the new laws actually creating justice and equality for everyone in society? Or do we see the pendulum just swinging the other way where new groups are now targeted? Like Christians are being targeted. Men are targeted. Children were supposed to be protected are actually at a place where they are being targeted with new rhetoric. And this is very important that we understand what's happening, because the message that's coming forth is to make sure that the downtrodden groups, the historically oppressed groups, that those groups get what they deserve, that they get equality, that their voice is heard. That's what's being shared. That's not what's happening. While Babylon's agenda is going down, because Babylon's agenda is in fact oppressive. It's the truth. It's been historically oppressive. It's been racist. It's been fascist. It's been all of that. That is the truth. That's how Babylon rolls. That's how it establishes an empire. It's through all of those means. Slavery, racism, injustice. Babylon uses those things to establish an empire. So the beast is telling the truth a little bit. But then it creates a new narrative. And the new narrative is that in order to come to a place of equity and justice, we've now got to take those who were on the bottom and put them on the top. And they have to dictate the narrative. So now what we have is we've got a new textbooks being written, new curricula being written. We've got new teachers and new policies for teachers, and all this happened in a few months. Well, now our students, our young people have to be taught this way. And it's not a way that brings us all to a place of equality and working together, like we saw in South Africa with the Truth and Reconciliation, where everybody came to the table, historic atrocities were addressed, but the goal was truth and true healing. And they're still working on that. It's certainly not a perfect model, but it's the best model we've seen in contemporary times. That's not what we're doing, not in the United States and not in other places. Oh no, those scales that were tipped this way are now being tipped this way. And we see that in order to give some social equality, religious freedoms are being taken. Now, how is that equitable? When our Constitution actually protects both social and religious freedom. So we give social freedom at the cost of religious freedom? No, that's the plan of the beast. Because the beast wants to make sure that those who were persecuted by Babylon, see, Babylon kills God's people. The beast wants to make sure that they have no rights, no voice, and are completely compromised, so that they have to submit to the beast's new way of doing things. So God's people are then demonized, ostracized, and oppressed in a whole nother way. So let's talk about how Babylon did it. Let's look at this. In verse 6 of Revelation chapter 17, It says, I saw the woman drunk with the blood of God's people. That is from the blood of the people who testify about Yeshua. And when I read this, Lord was talking to me about this the other day. I said to him, Lord, okay, what good people has Babylon killed? So it took me back historically. This is what you can see historically. They can brought me up to contemporary times. Historically, you're going to see the third empire in Daniel chapter 7. So you see Babylon, which is the winged lion, pride of life, pride of man. You see Medo-Persia, which destroyed the Babylonian Empire, which is the bear, which is violence and denial, right? You see the Greek Empire, which destroyed the Medo-Persian Empire, with the four heads and the four wings, which really represents how quickly it's a leopard, and how quickly Alexander the Great took over the world. But that's reason and world conquest. And we see Greek reasoning still ruling the world. Like just because Alexander died and the Greek Empire was split into four smaller empires, that conquest of the world by Greek thinking never stopped, which is why we use Greek names for things, which is why we teach our children all about the Greek gods. This is why we read Greek books like the Odyssey and the Iliad, like because that conquest never stopped. But the fourth beast, that terrifying beast in Daniel chapter 7, that beast there, because the next empire after Greece was Rome, that beast shows up as the Roman Empire. But interestingly enough, remember what we see in Revelation chapter 17, Babylon is riding the beast. She's not just riding the beast in contemporary times. She rode the beast back during the times of the Roman Empire as well. While the beast itself became a reigning principality in Rome, that fourth empire, right? The beast, the terrifying beast. That Babylonian principality, just because the Babylonian Empire was destroyed, that Babylonian Empire, Babylonian principality didn't give up its power in the world. It wanted to still rule. So while the Roman Empire was certainly led by the beast itself, it had influences from Babylon. So you're going to see both Babylon and the beast at work in Rome in an intertwined way. And we'll see both Babylon and the beast growing up through the rest of the world. From the times of the Roman Empire until now, we see both the strategies of Babylon and the strategies of the beast at work throughout the world, even into the United States and today. So when we look back at the way Babylon worked during the Roman Empire in like the times of, just prior to Messiah, and of course in the first century up until like the 4th century, what we see is Babylon persecutes God's people. We see those emperors in the 1st century, the 2nd century, 3rd century. We see them actually destroying Christians, lighting them on fire, sending them into the circus, or doing anything like our circus. It would have been, animals just eating Christians in the Colosseum, things like that. Just hanging Christians up on stakes, and certainly doing the same thing to Jews. Just all of God's people. And there was a time, of course, when Christians, before they even got the name Christian, Messianics were part of Israel. So we see Jews being persecuted first by the spirit of Babylon in the Roman Empire, just being killed, destroyed, just the blood of Jews all over Israel and all over the Roman Empire. But then we see as this group Christians form within the Jews, and then becomes its own separate group. Of course, we see centuries of Christians being hunted down and blamed for everything, just like we see happening with Jews throughout history, especially in the time of the Roman Empire. So these two groups, which are both God's people, Jews and Christians, we see Babylon drinking their blood, meaning wanting to take Jews and Christians out during the time of the Roman Empire when it was at its height, throughout the centuries in earlier historic times. But in contemporary times, I was like, okay, Lord, the United States, we know has a contract covenant with Babylon. What did that look like in contemporary times? And God said, remember, Babylon builds itself on the backs of the poor, the slave, the impoverished, the refugees and immigrants. So anyone in our contemporary times, or even in the last 100 years, who spoke up for the poor, who spoke up for refugees and immigrants, anyone who fought for people to be free from this commercial and fascist system, but to have some economic equality, to have freedom from the monetary system that Babylon set up, they were killed. They were assassinated, like Dr. King. We call, Dr. King's, we call the March on Washington. We just call that the March on Washington. That's not its official name. Its official name was the Poor People's March on Washington. Dr. King was not just fighting for African Americans, who, of course, were descendants of slaves, which right then would have been an affront to the Babylonian system. He was also fighting for the economically disadvantaged. We see others being killed, those who were fighting for economic disadvantage. We see JFK and RFK being killed. We see people who stood up against Big Pharma, who have sought for us to have healthy lives. We're not dependent upon medications, and we're not dependent upon, other things like Dr. Sadie. Gone. And this is important that we get that, because if you look at just the United States the last 100 years, anyone who stood against this economic machine that Babylon created, they were assassinated. And it was mysterious. And it seemed like, this person was working alone or that. No. It was Babylon taking them out because they were standing against Babylon wanting to become even more profitable on the backs of poor people, immigrants, descendants of slaves, those who had been affected by near genocide attempts like Native Americans. Whenever anyone stands for the downtrodden, Babylon has taken them out historically in this nation. Now let's look at the beast in the Roman Empire and coming up to this time. And then we'll close out by looking at what's happening in Israel right now. The beast, again, the Roman Empire actually had both influences, the beast and Babylon. The beast, you see this in Daniel chapter 7. What it does is it changes the set times and laws. So worship of God in Israel was always attacked by the Romans. Always. You see Pontius Pilate shut down Passover and stuff like that. All these things happening prior to Yeshua's ministry and prior to the birth of the ecclesia. But once the ecclesia comes into play and you see the truth of the Bible, this evangelism, this good news, just spreading like wildfire throughout the Roman Empire, there were these attempts to shut it down. But more than just shutting it down, we see later attempts with it, because the beast is the most cunning of all these principalities, where Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, y'all know I talk about this all the time, he becomes a Christian, so-called. But what he does, he changes all the feast days. He changes the Sabbath day. He even changes the name of our Messiah. So that he's not Yeshua, which means God saves. God saves, the God of Israel saves. He's Jesus, which is a Roman name, or even in Greek, Jesus. So that the focus is now on other gods. Zeus, the sun god, Saturn, where Jesus becomes this amalgamation of all the Roman gods, as opposed to being the Jewish Messiah who fulfills scripture. All that is the beast, anti-Messiah, changing the set times and the laws, seeking to deceive the elect, as if it were possible. This is what the Lord tells us in the book of Matthew, that this end-time beast will seek to deceive the elect. So he changes all of these things so that those who say they're God's people, they don't have to get assassinated like Babylon does. Babylon would just take God's people out and cover it up and keep moving. Oh no, the beast changes doctrine and then sells it to God's people and says, this is the truth. What you're doing wasn't right. And it brings all these different things together. It will integrate all these different things that actually should not go together. Remember, I told you the beast has 7 heads. This is a complete manifestation in various ways. But eventually it brings all those ways together into the one body of the beast and creates a whole new system. Well, Christianity, as we know it today, is a whole new system. It's not what was designed in the scripture, not what Yeshua taught and established. It's not what was observed in the 1st century. It's a whole new animal. But it's not just Christianity. The enemy then creates whole new world religions that take some of the Bible, but then steal it just a little bit and change it. And then brings in other thoughts, other ideas, other worldviews, and incorporates this and incorporates that. The beast will incorporate all types of things. Remember what he's looking for. He's looking for everyone who's been discontented and felt disconnected. He takes something that they value. He makes it a part of his system so they feel like they belong in his system. But the system the beast creates is not a true system because it doesn't have the true principles of any of the things that he's brought together. He makes something new. And the reason he makes something new is because at the end of the day, he's actually creating a system that will point everybody to worship Satan. He never says that, not at the beginning. At the beginning, the beast presents a false peace. Look at all these things we can bring together. We can live in harmony. We can all live in peace together. We can all do it together. All you got to do is stop saying that Yeshua or Jesus is the Son of God. All you got to do is get this vaccine. We can go back to normal. All you got to do is agree on this and compromise on that. And then we can all be one. See, the areas, the things that he takes out, the truths that he removes, the truths that the beast omits are the things that actually point us to God. The parts that he puts in, which actually facilitates compromise, are the things that will actually prepare us to worship Satan. Because remember, the beast hates Babylon. So the beast is attacking our economic and commercial systems. So they're all starting to fall. Financial systems falling, banking systems falling, the value of the dollar falling. All of these things, industries being destroyed, businesses closing. The beast has attacked Babylon and everything we know about buying and selling. The beast is attacking it. One, because it hates Babylon. It tells us it's setting us free, but it's preparing us for a whole new system. Because, here we go, Revelation chapter 13, what does it tell us? In verse 16, it says, it also forces everyone, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, preventing anyone from buying or selling unless he has the mark. That is the name of the beast or the number of its name. Now, what you need to know about this is that, remember, the beast doesn't discriminate. Now, he will raise up all these hate groups. There's a whole bunch of hate groups that are part of the beast. All these extreme cults, all these extreme groups, they're part of the beast. All of them. Each one of them is the head of the beast. Muslim extremists, KKK, like all of them, neo-Nazis, they're all heads of the beast, all of them. But he's going to bring everybody together. Because remember, it's actually, they're all heads of one body. They don't know it right now. They don't know they're all the same, but they are. He's going to bring all these discontented, dejected groups, bring them all together and say, it doesn't matter. You're poor, you're rich, you're free, if you're a slave, it doesn't matter. There's one way for everything. And the one way that he presents, it will replace religion because he's uniting everybody. It will replace economics because he's destroyed Babylon's economic system. And his new system will now require everybody worship the same way. Now, there'll be some subtle nuances for individuality, but there'll be some consistent themes that actually focus all of us on worshiping Satan. And as we're worshiping the enemy and don't realize it, right? There'll be new economic systems put in place. And these new economic systems will then make sure that no one can buy, sell, or trade. Which means you can't have a business, you can't purchase anything, nothing, unless you have the mark of the beast. Now, this is so important that we get that, because as Babylon is falling now, as we see, our commercial system as we know it, it is shifting and changing, and it no longer exists the way it used to exist. Everything is changing. The beast is capitalizing on it and making a new system that seems more equitable and seems more integrated. This is why people are saying, "Oh, we beware of socialism," because it looks socialistic. But remember, the capitalistic system was based on Babylon. So it's not like it was better. This is why there are people who hate that system as well, especially the downtrodden and the poor. So the beast capitalizes on those who hated the capitalistic system and says, well, you deserve good things too. Not great things. Remember, the beast is all about sacrifice, fasting, discipline, all of that. But everybody should be equal because we're all important, right? And it makes a whole new system that nobody can operate in unless it surrenders to the beast. Now we have to get that because the changing of the guard is happening right now. As kingdom citizens, we can't go from the pot to the fire. We have to be in this narrow place where we discern what's happening. When we say bye to Babylon, don't try to hold on to it. Be delivered from mammon, let it go. Focus on God as your provider, Yahweh Yireh, and not be willing to make any type of false peace or any type of concession. Even if the first three things sound right, if that fourth thing is a lie, that's the beast. Don't do it because that part is a lie. Oh, this is good. This is good. Wait a minute. Soon as you get to that, wait a minute, that's the beast. That's how he operates. He'll give you some things that seem right and benevolent. And then there's a lie. Don't go for the lie. If there's a lie anywhere in it, it's not from God. And you got to understand that's how the beast works. The beast is the wisest and most cunning of all these principalities. That's why he's been saved for the last. He's the last one in human history before our Messiah returns. So we've got to be wise. This requires discernment. That we recognize, no, that's the beast. I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm not going to connect with that. I'm not compromising in that way. Instead, I'm going to stand on the complete truth, all of the truth. And this is why God's people have to be in a place of great integrity. Because when we are greedy, when we are racist, when we are fascist, when we are self-involved, when we are not founded on true doctrine in the Bible and we are syncretistic in our own doctrine because we've added all types of stuff in, we've cherry picked, the beast sniffs it out. And the beast points at us and says, we're Babylon, we need to go down. And that's exactly what's been happening. Why? Because the body hasn't been delivered. Because Babylon had infiltrated the body of believers. Absolutely it had. We hadn't been delivered, so the beast hates us. And the beast is recognizing Babylon in us. And because we haven't been delivered from Babylon, we've been targeted by the beast. No, we got to be completely delivered from Babylon, be on that narrow path of the Lord, where we love the way he says to love. Not in this compromising way of compromising standards, but in loving people just because they're made in the image of God. And praying for all of us to be set free from sin, because sin opens the door for either one of these principalities. We got to be free. Now, I'm going to tell you the last thing I told you, I was going to tell you how this connects to what's happening in Israel. Remember what I told you. Israel is always the prophetic picture of what's happening in the spiritual realm. So what's happening in the spiritual realm is invisible. Israel is very visible. Israel is very visible. When we look at what's happening in Israel, you'll see what's happening in the spiritual realm all over the world. Please know that there is a new government that has formed in Israel now. Prime Minister Netanyahu is no longer the prime minister. Instead, Naftali Bennett is the prime minister. And he is only going to be prime minister for 2 years because Yair Lapid is going to be prime minister 2 years after that. And this government, the new government that is formed in Israel, remember there hadn't been a government in Israel for about a year now. The new government that is formed in Israel it actually includes 8 different political parties. Right parties, left parties, centrist parties, and even a Muslim party. Now, this is what you need to know about these 8 political parties that make up the new government in Israel. The only thing they agree on is that they are against Netanyahu. It's the only thing they agree on. They don't agree on anything else, politically or doctrinally. They don't agree on anything else. They are opposing parties, all 8 of them. Now, it's important that you get that, because when we look at the last few years of Benjamin Netanyahu being prime minister, we see, of course, in his first few years, like his first 8 years, we see him really connecting with the truth of God, and we see, him standing, for standards for Israel, standing against his enemies, all of that. But in the last few years, allegations have come up. There's been some allegations against former Prime Minister Netanyahu, and all of the charges against him have to do with fraud, breach of trust, and bribery, where there's been instances of bribes, there's been instances of conflict of interest, there's been instances where people are saying that Netanyahu received money and favors and da 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 da. Now tell me what that sounds like. What principalities does that sound like? That's Babylon. It sounds like Babylon, right? Now, I'm not saying that former Prime Minister Netanyahu is Babylon. I'm not saying that. I pray for him every day still. Still, because I do believe that God raised him up. I do believe God used him. I do believe that God can still use him. But the allegations against him, the things that Israeli citizens even had a problem with concerning him, are things that are connected to the Babylonian system: bribes, fraud, them not being able to trust his political decisions because there's conflict of interest. That's Babylon. Side deals, things like that's Babylon. And we've absolutely seen that in Israel in contemporary years. He's kind of sold out some Israeli interests for financial interests. That's the truth. What do we see now, though? We see a coalition of 8 political parties that do not agree with each other, but they're all working together and compromising to create what would seem to be a false peace for Israel right now. In Israel, this new government has been called by some an 8-headed monster because it is literally a political experiment as to whether 8 different political parties who have nothing in common politically or doctrinally or morally, have nothing in common, the interest that the people they serve, nothing, none of it is in common, can work together to lead the government. Now, on the one hand, there's the optimism. Well, they do represent everybody in Israel because it's 8 different parties. The cross section then really represents every Israeli, right? Even Palestinian interests, right? So if they're able to come together, they could actually create a government that speaks to everybody in Israel. That's the optimism. That's what optimism says. But when you look at this in the spiritual realm, you're going to see a picture of what it looks like when anti-Messiah actually rises up. Now, we haven't seen it in the natural form, the way we see it in Israel right now, with literally 8 parties that are distinctly different from each other are working together to create a false peace. But we have seen some coalitions in the United States, we've seen some coalitions other places where things are coming together that doesn't make sense why they're coming together. Why are those things working together and coming together? Well, this is the beast taking those heads and making them now cooperate to create this new system that the beast is putting in place. Now, the truth is, when I look at any of these Israeli leaders, I don't see any of them embodying Babylon or embodying the beast. None of them is the Antichrist. None of them is Babylon. None of them is the beast. But that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is a picture of the changing of the guards that I was showing you was happening in the world. Babylon following the beast rising. And the fact that as the beast rises, it looks optimistic. Like, well, it could, maybe this is going to lead to some cooperation. Maybe we're going to finally get some things done. That's what it's going to look like when all of these groups that the beast has now lured people into joining rise up in this international scene and start to come together to create a new system, a new normal that replaces what's been destroyed by Babylon falling. It's going to look like what we see in the Israeli government right now. Very important that you get them. Remember what I said, Israel is the prophetic picture. I'm not calling anybody Antichrist, I'm not saying anybody's the beast, and I'm not saying that Netanyahu embodied Babylon. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is we've got to see a metaphoric picture, a prophetic picture here that prepares us for what we need to be looking for in the world. Coalitions that don't make sense. Compromise and coming together. It doesn't really make sense. Why is that happening? Why are they coming together? Why are they creating a system? This group and this group, this company and this company, this nation and this nation. Why is that happening? That's what it looks like as the beast puts these pieces in place to create its new system. I need y'all to understand. I need you to have spiritual eyes. I need you to go back to Revelation chapter 17. I need you to go back to Revelation chapter 13, Revelation 18. I need you to go back to all the teachings that I've been sharing since 2017 on the Truth and Spirit's YouTube page, on the YouTube channel, Truth and Spirit Live. Go to the playlist, Babylon and the Beast. Start watching those because you got to understand how cunning these two principalities are, both Babylon and the Beast, and how they are deceiving us, especially the beast. Yeshua himself said that the beast would seek to deceive even the elect, if it were possible. So that we're looking for peace. We want unity, but we cannot compromise biblical values for unity. We cannot do it. So I would encourage you to pray for Israel's leaders, particularly those who actually believe in the standards of Torah, particularly those who believe in Israel's right to exist, because they're part of this coalition. Pray that they will take their stand. Pray that they will not compromise in areas that are vital to Israel's future and vital to Israel's international relationships. Pray for our leaders in various ways, all types of leaders in the United States, that they would understand the biblical standard and not be willing to compromise. And pray for the body of believers globally, because the beast is looking to get the body to compromise, to be deceived. Babylon will take the body out. The beast wants to neutralize us and then lure us to actually be a part of his new system and eventually receive the mark and serve Satan. All of the things to prepare us for this are already in place. It's all in place. Very soon, we're going to start to see more and more and more. And I've given y'all a few examples already that exist already. Very soon, we're going to see more and more. We're being tested as a people. How much will we compromise? How much will we give them? How much are we willing to let go of? If we get this, how much will we let go of on the side? The enemy's already testing those words. And we've got it in a place where we take our stand for the truth, even at the cost of our lives, the cost of our livelihoods, the cost of our comfort. We've got to be willing to stand for truth and not compromise, because that's what this season is all about. Babylon season was all about selling out. The beast season is about compromise. We've got to make sure that we are not willing to compromise on God's standards. And the only way to do that is we need to know what God's standards are. Get in your word. And please remember that last year, the Lord gave us the Declaration of Kingdom Standards for the United States of America, which you can find at nationalkingdomcouncil.org, so that you can understand how the Bible itself applies to contemporary times in the United States on 7 key issues. And that number 7 is not a coincidence. We need to know what God is saying for this nation. I also want to encourage you to go to invitationmvmt.org and go to our National Fast page, because on that page, God has given us a word from the Lord for the United States from now into the millennial reign of Messiah, so that we'll know how we've got to take a stand. He's also caused us to birth the invitation movement, which is not going to compromise on God's standards. We want healing, we want peace, and we want justice, but we're not compromising on God's standards to do it, and we're standing with Israel while we do it. And so I want to encourage you to get shored up, because there's all types of movements out there that are compromised. There's good here, and there's compromise on God's standards here, and that's from the beast. Take your stand. Don't be drawn into it. I pray that this challenged you. I pray that you will share it with others, because it is an end time word that, like I said, I'm not hearing this from other people. Not the way I just described that scripture to you, because the Lord gave it to me. It's hot off the press. Make sure that you share this so that you can take your stand and other believers can do so as well. We can prepare for our Messiah's return and not be disqualified. Be blessed. I look forward to seeing you very soon.